Hello everyone, welcome to the Secrets of Tithi in Relationships, first of my series looking at relationships in your chart, and we're going right into the deep end, everyone. What is a Tithi and how can it tell you about your relationships? I have all the information on this video. This is a Vedic technique. It's not available in any other system of astrology. So if you're new to my channel, don't forget to sub below, and if the video is good for you, give it a thumbs up. Let's begin. So what exactly is a Tithi? A Tithi represents a portion of 12 degrees of the zodiac. It represents the separation of the sun and the moon in your chart. How far have they moved away from each other, from the dark moon to the full moon, and then all the way back to the dark moon again. This is actually representing water element. Tithi represents Jala, water, and water is emotion. So this separation, this relationship between the sun and the moon has everything to do with how we deal with emotions, how we relate to other people, and how relationships are for us in this lifetime. So here's a quick table, everybody, of the 30 Tithis in the month. As you can see, we have the Krishna, or the dark phase of the decreasing moon on this side, and the Shukla, or the increasing light on this side. Don't worry, by the way, I'm going to show you how to find your Tithi in just a second. But just to point out, there is a difference between the Shukla and the Krishna phase about emotional regulation that somebody has. Basically, if you are born in the Shukla, or the increasing moon phase, where the moon is getting brighter and brighter like this up to full moon, you have very, very sensitive emotions. If you were born in the Krishna, or the dark phase, where the moon is losing light in this way, you have strong emotions, etc., depending on your Tithi, but they tend to be a little less sensitive. So how to find your birth Tithi, everyone? It's very simple. If you've already got a Vedic birth chart, that should have a Panchang section on it, and in that section you should see the name or the number of the Tithi you were born on. If you don't have that, I've actually linked below to a website known as Devaguru. It's free to use for 16 days. It wouldn't take you more than a second to see your Tithi. It's clearly on that first page, even with the ruling planet of your Tithi as well. And actually, you can use that on your mobile phone, on your tablet, or on a computer. Failing that, there is another method. You could simply Google a Panchang calendar for the month of your birth. I've just done that here for January 2022, and as you can see every Tithi is clearly marked here. All the names are here, so you would very easily find the name of the Tithi on your date of birth. Now you know what your birth Tithi is. The next stage is to find out the ruling planet of that birth Tithi. A table for you then, everybody, with all of the Tithis listed, including their number here, as well as the ruling planet of each Tithi. Notice Ketu is not included in these planets because Ketu is Moksha Karaka. He cannot take you into relationships truly. He doesn't want to do that. He wants to take you to liberation. So he's not interested in relationship attachment. So from the Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, Saturn, or Rahu, one of these is ruling your birth Tithi. So if your Tithi is number 1, Pratipad, number 9, Navami, your Tithi Lord is the sun. If your Tithi is Divita, number 2, Dasami, number 10, you're ruled by the moon, and so on. You can read all the way down here. I will try to post this actually below the video so you can check this out easily. So now you have the ruling planet of your Tithi, or the Tithi Lord. Let's see how it impacts your relationships. Actually, Pandit Sanjay Rath has called this planet the water boy. It's quite interesting connotation because this planet is carrying the Jala from your Tithi. It's ruling your emotions and therefore your relationships. So when the sun is the ruling planet of your Tithi, this gives you a very strong dominating nature in relationships, but you're very strongly attached to family. Dharma and the sun go together. So family life is very important to you in your relationships. Your whole relationship nature revolves around family life in some way. So whatever your sexuality, whatever your relationship situation, you want to create a family. For both men and women, there can be actually more than one major attachment in your life. And because your family is so important to you, sometimes romantic relationships come from your family circle. If you have the moon ruling the Tithi in your life, this means that you are a little bit fickle. Let's face it, the moon is changing, waxing and waning. You're very, very emotional because the moon is the emotions planet. We know this. But your emotions are up and down in your relationships. One minute you're all for the relationship, next minute you're not so sure. You are very much influenced by other people, by your social group as well. And you can be very attracted to other people on a whim, actually. You're always not exactly looking for a new partner, but you're always open to the possibilities. If Mars should be your Tithi Lord, this makes you a bit of a hothead in relationships, definitely. You're extremely passionate, but you see, the thing is, contradiction is that Mars is actually a brahmachari. This gives a real contradiction, because on the one hand, this can inflame by this fire element, Mars is fire, your sexuality. So your sex nature is extremely strong. You can be, particularly in the youth of your life, always having affairs, new relationships, men and women quickly attracted to new partners, highly sexual and highly erotic sometimes. So depending what this Mars is doing in your chart, there can be separation, there can be divorce, there can be difficulty because of the contentious, quarrelsome nature. It's hard to be satisfied, I've seen, when this Mars is the Tithi Lord in your relationships. Your emotions are always just literally at the boiling point. And jealousy, possessiveness, I've seen also, is a very strong factor. So sometimes under affliction in your chart, there can be violence in relationships, but that's not the norm. Normally, it's just a real passion that you have to try to control to make relationships more stable. And of course, Mars is highly independent. So this is the thing. You're a very independent person. You don't want to bend your life to somebody else's. You don't want to be told what to do. You're not very adaptable in a relationship. And this is another factor. When Mercury is your Tithi Lord, you should know that Mercury is the planet of youth. He's the adolescent. So you can see where this is going to go. There's a youthfulness in your relationships, and you like younger people. So whether you are male or female, when you get older, maybe you're attracted to the younger woman or the younger man. This can be seen. What it really means is that you don't like the responsibility in relationships. You like relationships to be fresh and just having that newness about them. So when you start a relationship, you're full of excitement, but you can get bored easily as well. You need an absolute, complete mental and philosophical compatibility with your mate, or you just can't be satisfied. When Jupiter is your Tithi Lord, you should know that in the Vedic literature, it's the only Lord who has a positive press, basically, in relationships. What it means is that you're very dharmic, very moral. You're very attached to your spouse. You'll do everything to maintain the relationship once you make commitment. But say you make a commitment and then you find you're not compatible, you'll still try to maintain the relationship. You're completely family-minded and you're very good with children. You love to be a parent. Parenting brings out the very best in you. So it's a very dharmic and moral factor in your relationships. I've also seen that because Jupiter naturally rules the 9th and 12th house, which are about foreign lands, sometimes you can actually go to live abroad when you marry, or you can marry somebody from a completely different culture, religion, something of that sort. And your belief systems has to match with your spouse. You have to have a similar philosophy of life. If Venus is your Tithi Lord, we all know that Venus is about sensuality and sexuality because Venus is the planet of reproduction, making babies. So extremely sexual, just like Mars, but it's a different feel to Mars. It's not so much aggressive. It's just around the desire nature is very strong. So you become easily attached emotionally, physically, mentally to somebody, and you just want to bond with them. You just want to have a very special romantic closeness. Your desire nature in relationships becomes very strong when Venus is Tithi Lord. You're always looking for the most experience, the most delight in a relationship. You want the most lovely girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it is. You just want to delight your senses in the attachment, and you're very romantic. All the flowers, all the cards, all the romance itself just thrills you and gives you great satisfaction. So depending on the condition of this Tithi Lord Venus in your chart, you find it hard to resist the excitement of romance, attraction. You're easily seduced, and you can even easily seduce others. So there is that to consider. When Saturn is your Tithi Lord, it's a very interesting situation because the karmas are coming strong into your relationship. You find people who are not very good for you actually irresistibly attractive. You know what I'm talking about. So the bad man or the bad woman, as it were, who's not very stable but who's all gorgeous and attractive or has something about them, mightn't be looks, which you cannot resist. Saturn is a karmic pull. It pulls you into relationships which are not always good for you. So when you've got Saturn as your Tithi Lord, it's so important that you get to know somebody slowly. You take time. Saturn is time to get to know somebody properly. Then you won't make so many mistakes. But Saturn as your Tithi Lord wants to take you into commitment, into responsibility in a relationship. Sometimes you have to take more responsibility for a spouse than you would have ever expected to have to. And it's all about you being up to do that, though, because Saturn will require a lot from you in relationships. In this way, Shani as your Tithi Lord is certainly a little bit of a test of your patience, a test of your discrimination, most certainly. When Rahu, the North Node, is your Tithi Lord, you're going to push against the boundaries of society in your relationships. Rahu is outside of society's boundaries. Now, boundaries have come down in the West in any case. So you could live with somebody not being married. You could have children outside of marriage. But that's not such a big thing these days. But you get the idea. Whatever is not normative in your society, you get pulled into that. But here's the thing. You're extremely independent in relationships. Nobody can make you do anything. You will always go your own way, choosing who you think is the best partner for you. Now, just like with Shani, you can be attracted to difficult people, but sometimes you're the difficult person yourself. You're very challenging in your relationships. You challenge your spouse. You push the actual boundaries with your spouse. You like excitement in relationships. You're easily bored. You want challenge. You desire change in a relationship. So it's not a very stable combination. But what the most important thing is, though, is that you learn to control your desire nature. Rahu is just the head without a body. You're never satiated in a relationship. You want more sensuality. More desire just grows and grows when you find somebody, and nothing can stand in your way. When this is an afflicted Rahu, worst case scenario, there could be criminal tendencies in regard to relationships. You could take somebody else's spouse. You could take somebody else's money in a relationship. This is like really, really afflicted, okay? But for most people, it isn't going to go into such dark corners. It just means that you won't have the average normal relationship. You will always push out a boundary. So you may get divorced, you may get separated, but you'll always find somebody else. Here's the key. Rahu is insatiable. There's always somebody on the horizon. So now we understand a little bit more about what your Tithi Lord is taking you into in relationships. The next stage is to see the Lord in your chart itself, starting with the sign position. By the way, it goes without saying you must have a sidereal Vedic chart. You cannot see Tithi Lord or anything to do with the Tithi Lord in a Western tropical zodiac. Important point though, if your Tithi Lord is retrograde, you have to read in the opposite sign. So let's say you've got Shani as your Tithi Lord and Saturn is in Capricorn, but he's retrograde. You should count him as in the opposite sign for these readings, as if he's in Cancer. But the house position stays the same. It's just the sign which switches into the opposite sign if your Tithi Lord is retrograde. So what happens if the Lord of your Tithi Lord is placed in the water signs in Cancer, Scorpio and Pisces? Well, first of all, Tithi Lord is Jala. So placed in these water signs is generally very good. Apart from Scorpio, there's a little problem with Scorpio. I'll come to that. But generally in the water signs, your emotions are deep and you express your emotions in your relationships. Your relationships become deeply emotional and deeply expressive. If the Tithi Lord is in Cancer, it gives a real warmth to the relationship. It's ruled by the moon. You want the home, you want the family, you want the caring, and it generally increases these good factors in your relationship. It increases security. If it's in Pisces, also good because ruled by Jupiter. So you want that dharmic, moral relationship. You want a spiritual factor there too, because Pisces is so spiritual. You want that deep understanding. Having religious factors in common with your spouse is really important, and generally it's a very good placement. But when the Tithi Lord is in Scorpio, now it is a water sign, but it's ruled by Mars and Ketu, both of which are fire Agni factors. That's where it gets a little bit difficult. There's emotion for sure, and the emotion is expressed for sure, but it can be full of possessiveness, jealousy and anger, and this is something which you have to control. If a Tithi Lord is in the earth signs, in Taurus, Virgo or Capricorn, it's generally good for the stability of your relationships, for your commitment to your relationships. But every one of these has a different factor, of course. But generally, Tithi Lord being water, Jala, does well in these earth signs. Tithi Lord in Taurus, though, is a very sensual, very possessive a little bit, but also very much about romance and togetherness. You want it all in the relationship. You want that family home. You want that belonging. You want that perfect love relationship. There can be a little bit of criticism if it isn't coming up to scratch. But generally, it's a very close relationship because Taurus is that closeness. If it's in Virgo, ruled by Mercury, you want friendship in your relationship. Yes, you want stability, and you'll probably get stability, but you have to have friendship. You want to talk to your spouse. You want to express all your feelings, just like with a friend with your spouse. Tithi Lord in Capricorn, you want that serious relationship. You're a little bit ambitious for your spouse. You want to be going somewhere in the world, doing something in the world, and you definitely want a traditional relationship. Now, when your Tithi Lord is in an air sign, in Gemini, Libra or Aquarius in your chart, this is a little more difficult now. We're coming down in the beneficence, as it were. This is not so good, but it's still okay. It's going to help you communicate in relationships. You communicate well if your Tithi Lord is in these signs, and that communication helps relationship. Tithi Lord in Gemini, you can be changeable in relationships, always flitting about and a little bit flirty even sometimes. But generally speaking, it's good again because you want a friendship. You want that Mercury factor. You need that compatibility intellectually. If you don't have the intellectual compatibility, Tithi Lord in this Gemini, the relationship simply won't work. In Libra, once again, it's that Venus factor, but here it's about business, it's about money, it's about you want a good relationship that's going to make you feel secure but give you status in society. You're very much about balancing everything out with your spouse, extremely romantic in your expression and very compromising, so it can be helpful actually. Tithi Lord in this Libra sign. Tithi Lord in Aquarius brings in that Rahu factor. You want an exciting relationship, and then sometimes Shani takes over and you want a traditional relationship. It's even a bit schizophrenic in relationships, Tithi Lord in Aquarius. Don't take that literally, okay? You simply swing from one side to the other in actual regard to what you're seeking in relationship. But as with all the earth signs, it's good for communication with your spouse. But the most difficult placements of all for the Tithi Lord are in the fire signs, in Aries, Leo, Sagittarius. Whatever the Tithi Lord, if they're in these fire signs, any of them, the Tithi Lord, the Jala factor in your chart is boiling over when it's in Aries, ruled by Mars, Leo, ruled by the Sun, and even in Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter, because after all, these are all Agni signs, fire signs. So basically, what you got to watch out for is the anger coming into the relationship, the boiling point, the passion, the desire. It's hard to contain your feelings in relationships. Even if you don't express them, they're boiling up inside of you. Now, all relationships can have arguments and difficulty, because that's just what relationships are about. But when your Tithi Lord is in a fire sign, there's quite a lot of distension. There's quite a lot of quarrel. There's a lot of difficulty getting that harmony with your spouse. In Aries, you're passionate, you're determined, you're forthright, and you're impatient to get the relationship off the ground. You just don't even think before you get into a relationship. You want what you want, and that's the end of it. You're all guns blazing. Leo, you want to be important in that relationship, and you don't like it if you feel second best or if you're not given that status. So you want to be the king or the queen in the relationship. It's not always easy for you to get that. Sagittarius, quarrels over religious belief systems, all sorts of factors can occur. It's not so much really even about the signs I've seen in these fire signs. It's simply about the fire which is boiling up, evaporating the Jala in your Tithi Lord. So you definitely need to look at doing a remedy for your Tithi Lord if they should be in a fire sign, so that you can become aware of this the earlier in life the better, so that you can take control of this element of disharmony in your chart. Now, next, what does a house mean where your Tithi Lord is? This is how you get into relationships where you may find your spouse, and has a lot to do with the beginning of relationships, how they take off in your life. Now, the problem with this is that every house has a multitude of significators, really, truly. Every house has a list of factors connected to it. Places, people, animals, even, trees, flowers, everything. Every single house has a multitude of material factors connected. So I can't really do justice to this on this video in regard to what factors draw you to your spouse, but I can attempt to bring up some factors, and that's what I'm going to do here. Tithi Lord in the first house, there's something special about you that attracts your spouse to you, who you are, your status in life, what you do in life. There's something about your attractiveness that just pulls your spouse to you. So you don't really have to do anything, just be yourself, and your spouse is attracted to you. Tithi Lord in second house, it's your family of origin that can introduce you to your spouse, or you meet them through a member of your family very often, or in some family gathering. It's all about family factors. Third house, Tithi Lord likes the competition of finding a spouse. You see, third house is about competitiveness, like the sixth house. It's almost got an element of quarrel, of warfare to it. So you go out on that battlefield of life to attract your spouse, and you enjoy being the winner, as it were, in this battle to win a partner. And you actually can get yourself into some difficulty with this also, because it's a quarrelsome house. But third house also is internet and mass communication. So sometimes spouse can be actually found through the internet. Fourth house, Tithi Lord, your spouse has to come to your house. Your spouse has to come to your home, has to be connected to your mother in some way, has to be connected to your family of origin. Meeting spouse in your country of origin, very often seen. Tithi Lord in the fifth house, well, you're going to meet your spouse while you're out and enjoying yourself. Entertainment, so it could be anything, could be parties, could be cinema, could be any form of entertainment. Also educational institutions. You could meet your spouse if you are a teacher in your workplace, since teaching is also represented by this fifth house. Main thing is you're enjoying yourself. There's a flow going on in your life when you meet your spouse. Tithi Lord in 6th house, very interesting. You could meet your spouse in any medical setting, hospital, whatever, or you could simply meet your spouse in your workplace, whatever you do, because this is a house of work colleagues. You could meet spouse in a legal setting under some stressful situation. There's a little bit of stress in your life, though, when you meet your spouse. Because 6th house is the 12th to the 7th of relationships, sometimes you can be with somebody else when you meet a spouse, or they are with somebody else, creating all those difficult karmas, complications that can be a struggle. So you have to be aware of that. Very important to be honest and open about everything, because 6th house, just like 8th house, 12th house, can create some difficult karmas. It's the marketplace of life where you meet your spouse, just like 3, 6, and 11. This could even be on the internet. You meet your spouse when you're out and about in the business world, in the working environment, when you're just basically out and about doing your life. This could be a shopping center, anywhere. It's wherever people gather, wherever there's business going on, wherever there's transactions going on, including, as I say, internet. That's where you can meet your spouse. Because 7th house represents close friends, sometimes spouse is a long-lasting friend to begin with, or friends introduce you to your spouse. Tithi Lord in 8th house, there's a crisis going on in your life when you meet your spouse. They may be helping you with that crisis. You could meet them in business setting, but there's something secret about meeting your spouse. There's something a little bit hidden about this meeting when it's in the 8th house. Occasionally, this can show, Tithi Lord here, just like 6th house, that the actual spouse is with somebody else, or you're with somebody else, creating difficult karmas, difficult complications in you getting together. Or there could just be a great deal of difficulty persuading family that this is a suitable relationship for you. Tithi Lord in 9th house, strong chance of meeting a spouse in foreign lands. Obviously rules foreign land, but also traveling, no matter how far, how distant, travel can be involved. Also in education setting, higher education or religious setting of any sort, etc. You could meet a spouse. This is also father house, so through your father or father's family also, you could meet a potential spouse. Tithi Lord in 10th house, you can meet a partner at your workplace, quite simply, or while you are doing any career-related activity whatsoever. So anything which you are doing related to your work takes you into a circumstance where you can meet a potential partner. The 11th house has a lot of meaning related once again to the workplace. It's your colleagues, your friendships in your workplace. They could actually become a spouse or introduce you to a spouse. 11th house is about your wider network circles, organizations, social groups that you belong to. So social life could definitely introduce you to a potential partner. Of course, 11th house, together with the 3rd and 7th, is all about communicating with the world in general. So once again, the internet could be an avenue with which you meet your spouse. Tithi Lord in the 12th house, you have to go a distance to find your spouse. You might have to go into foreign land, but that's not the norm. You certainly have to travel. It's not just in your hometown. 12th house often connected to the Tithi Lord when there are long distance relationships, or there's a separation with your spouse that you may not live together, but you are together. Those sort of relationships. There may be some secrecy when you first meet a spouse. Once again, just like 6th house, 8th house, you could be with somebody else or they could be with somebody else. Once again, these are difficult, complicated karmas. You have to try to be honest and avoid these complications if you can. There's also some very strong past life karma here, because this is a house of your past life karmas as well. So you are absolutely drawn karmically to finish relationship karmas with certain people in this life. Finally, of course, 12th house, just like the 3rd, the 7th and the 11th, does represent communication through the internet, because it's about people at a distance to you. So once again, internet could bring you together with a potential partner. Now, the Mahadasha of the planet that is your Tithi Lord is very important. Important relationship decisions are made. Even challenges can be there depending on the condition of your Tithi Lord. If your Tithi Lord is afflicted, it's dangerous for relationships. And particularly if it's in a fire sign, connected to Mars in some way as well. Sometimes Mars, fire element, or connected to Ketu in some way, fire element. it's difficult in the Mahadasha for relationships. Sometimes separation can occur. Now, that's not always the end of the relationship, but particularly Tithi Lord in fire sign, you have to spend time apart. Maybe partner has got a job somewhere else, there's distance between you, things like that. But in some way, some sort of separation can occur. The other thing is, in the bhukti of the Tithi Lord also, similar relationship issues can appear. Most importantly now, let's look at some example charts. I have 10 charts for you here. I'm going through them very quickly. I'm focusing on the Tithi Lord, and the afflictions or not, and the relationships of these people. I'm also looking at the Mahadasha, bhukti periods also, to see how they are afflicting or not according to the Tithi Lord. And most importantly, we can even make a few predictions. Let's see. Let's start with Marilyn Monroe, the famous Hollywood actress, film star, sex symbol. She had a very difficult beginning in life, a lot of trauma, loss of her mother, loss of security. But later in life, she got success and fame. But one thing she wasn't able to do was have long-lasting relationships. In fact, her relationships were really more or less pretty much a disaster. Her Tithi Lord is Venus because she was born on the 6th day of the decreasing moon. As you can see, here's the moon, here's the sun. So basically, she's born on Venus, which gives her all that sensuality, great sensuality, very attractive in her persuasion of partners, very much seductive person, and liking to be attracted to other people frequently, like I've just talked about Venus. But the important thing is she has a Tithi dosh. Why? Because Venus is in a fire sign. The most difficult placement for any Tithi is in the fire sign. So the water of the Tithi, we're not concerned about Venus here, but just that Venus is Tithi Lord. This Tithi Lord is Jala element, burned up in the fire sign, completely destroyed, means that her relationships are hard to maintain. And this is completely borne out in her 3 failed marriages. Her emotional nature was not stable. She could not maintain these relationships. Another Hollywood actress, this time Jennifer Aniston, born on Krishna Dasami and therefore with the moon as her Tithi Lord. Although her Tithi Lord is the moon and is placed in a water sign, as I've shown you, Scorpio is a very difficult water sign. But it's even more challenging for Jennifer here because it's a 29-degree Scorpio. It's Anagandanta point. It's a point at which water meets the fire sign of Sagittarius. The very last degree of Scorpio is the boiling point, the Gandanta point. Really dangerous. So this moon is in a very precarious position. Her emotional nature is cutting edge and relationships become very difficult to maintain. Now, so far, Jennifer Aniston has had 2 marriages, one to Brad Pitt from 1998 until 2005, and a 2-year marriage from 2015 until 2017. We should also note that she was in the Moon Mahadasha when she divorced Brad Pitt in 2005, and she'd gone into the Mars Mahadasha when she had the difficult 2-year relationship 2015-17. Notice that, of course, Moon is with Mars and in a sign of Mars. Another Hollywood actor, Johnny Depp, and another Tithi dosh. I've looked at Johnny Depp in quite a few of my videos. He's got a very interesting chart with this Shani 7th house, his Atmakataka retrograde in own sign of Capricorn, but of course acting more like it's in Cancer. But that's another video. Check out on my Navamsa video. I've been through every one of his relationships. Now, Johnny Depp was born in the 3rd Tithi of the decreasing moon, which is ruled by Mars. So the passion, the dynamism, the multiple relationships, and the possessiveness, all of the things I've talked about connected to Mars on this video are there for Johnny Depp. But what sign is it in? Yes, it's in a fire sign, the most dangerous position for the Tithi Lord to be. This Tithi Lord in Leo then is certainly inflaming his emotions and the difficulty connecting to his partners. Actually, it was in Mars Mahadasha that he had a very passionate, completely passionate connection to Winoda Rider. He even tattooed her name onto his arm, Winoda forever. He proposed to her in this Mars Mahadasha and he was rejected. So we can see the difficulty of the Tithi Mahadasha. Now, Johnny Depp has had many relationships, quite a few since then, and certainly he's had children with another partner since then, but he's not found stability, he's not found a satisfactory partner. He has this Tithi dosh. He needs a remedy. Next, Britney Spears. Forgive me for my crazy spelling here on this chart. So, Britney Spears, I haven't looked very much at her chart. It's absolutely fascinating. And she has, of course, a difficult Tithi Lord as well, because her relationships have also been unsatisfactory and not lasting. What we notice is that her Tithi Lord is Venus. She's attractive. She gets attracted easily to other people. She's seductive, just like Marilyn Monroe. She easily gets herself into relationships, but she hasn't managed to find stability. Her Tithi Lord Venus is to be found in the sign of Capricorn. In itself, that's not a bad placement at all. It's a stable placement for relationships. So what's going on? Well, of course, can you see? It's exactly to the degree conjunct to Ketu. Ketu is, of course, fire element. So it's eating up and burning up, completely swallowing the Tithi Lord into the black hole that Ketu is. But also, of course, the fire element, that's the important factor. Ketu represents fire. Now, Britney Spears won't go through Venus Mahadasha or indeed Ketu Mahadasha even until much later in life. But we can definitely see that the Bhukti periods of Venus have caused separation and difficulty in her relationships. She was in Rahu Venus Dasha, or when she married in 2004 for exactly 55 hours, saying it was a mistake. Was in the same Rahu Venus when she married between 2003 and divorced in 2006. So you can see the strong influence and separating factor of this Tithi dosh ruled here by Venus. Once again, Britney Spears is in need of a remedy for this Tithi. Let's look at Elvis Presley, who has Mercury as his Tithi Lord. He was born in Shukla Chaturthi, which is ruled by Mercury. So a very sensitive man, because increasing moon increases sensitivity. Yes, once again, we have a Tithi dosh because the Tithi Lord Mercury is in a fire sign at 29 degrees of Sagittarius, most definitely burning up in the fire of Sagittarius. By the way, don't worry, I'm going to show you some charts without Tithi dosh, and so we can compare, okay? But this chart, Elvis Presley, difficulty in relationships. Now, I've told you about Mercury. Mercury is playful. Mercury doesn't want to make commitments. He had one marriage to Priscilla Presley, but he was with her for 7 years before he even thought of proposing. In that time, 1950s, 1960s, that was completely extraordinary. The marriage was, of course, when he got married, unsuccessful. That may have lasted before he got married. And actually, he was in Saturn Mercury, Mercury being the Tithi Lord, when he started to have extramarital affairs, and eventually the whole relationship broke down. The chart of King George VI, who was born in a Jupiter-ruled Tithi. He was born on a very dark moon. Can you see? The sun and the moon are almost conjunct in a new moon, but it's actually in the dark moon known as Treyodashi, number 13, ruled by Jupiter. So his emotions are not so sensitive, but it's a dark moon, so don't worry. You can have a long-lasting relationship and be born on a very dark moon. George VI, of course, is the father of the present Queen Elizabeth II of England, and his marriage was extraordinarily successful and happy and highly compatible. His wife, Elizabeth Bowes-Lyons, was his rock in a very difficult situation. He had speech problems, and he was the subject of that film King's Speech. Now, Tithi Lord Jupiter is placed in Cancer. That's a good placement, that's for sure. Water sign, excellent, but it's retrograde, so it doesn't act like in Cancer. It acts like it's in Capricorn. But still, Jupiter, Tithi Lord in Capricorn, you might say, well, that's debilitated. That's not the point as far as the Tithi Lord is concerned, because despite that debilitation acting like in Capricorn, it's actually in a good place because an earth sign supports the Jala water. So he got stability, he got support from his partner. In addition, just the Jupiter itself as his Tithi Lord indicates he's a very dharmic person. Stability, a family life, loving his children was the absolute center of his life. Now to Princess Diana. Princess Diana, of course, was the wife of Prince Charles, son of the present Queen. Yes, we're getting into some royal charts now. I love doing these, but what I like about them is that we can get good birth times. And then I find that Princess Diana has 2 birth times, and I'm taking this one now. Many reasons why, as Virgo Lagna, but that's not so relevant when we're looking at Tithi. So, Princess Diana was born on Krishna Chaturthi. This means that she was born on a decreasing moon. Her emotions are always told how sensitive she was. Well, yes, she's got a lot of sensitivity, but not so sharp in her emotions as we've been led to believe. And Mercury is her Tithi Lord, and where is it placed? Here's the rule again about retrograde, everybody, so important to see. It's in Gemini. That would be a fairly okay placement for the Tithi Lord, but it's retrograde, so it must count as though in the opposite sign. The opposite sign to Gemini is the fire sign of Sagittarius. Mercury has a strong Tithi dosh, therefore, in this chart. It's burning up in the fire of Sagittarius in reality. So with this occurring in her chart, it's difficult for Princess Diana to find stability and happiness in her relationship because of this dosh. So basically, she's finding it hard to contain her emotion, she's finding it hard to regulate emotion, and she's feeling dissatisfied. Of course, with Mercury as her Tithi Lord, she's looking for that intellectual compatibility, someone to be deeply friendship with and have a deep connection with, but Prince Charles just wasn't able to provide her with that. Now, Princess Diana died in Jupiter Mahadasha, so she never had her Mercury Mahadasha, but she did go through Jupiter Mercury, and it was during the Mercury Bhukti that her whole relationship was completely disintegrating. That was after the birth of her 2 children, and it was during that time that she actually confronted openly Camilla Parker Bowles. She confronted Camilla with the reality of what was going on between her and Prince Charles. This is Mercury trying to communicate and desperately sort things out, but it just didn't work at all. Let's look at Prince Charles now to compare to Diana. This is her husband, Prince Charles, of course, looking older here. And, of course, Prince Charles was born on a virtual full moon here, but actually on the Venus ruled Tithi. So the Venus is in Virgo. Now, Virgo is an earth sign. That's a good placement for Tithi Lord. It's not a Tithi dosh. Of course, a Venus-ruled Tithi will most definitely be attracted to many people and form very often many relationships. He had many girlfriends. He was known for so many girlfriends before he actually married Diana. And actually after Diana as well, there was rumours of affairs, not just Camilla Parker Bowles. Of course, Venus is in the 3rd house. 3rd house is quarrel, contention, litigation. Camilla Parker Bowles was married to somebody else. So all those complications were there. But eventually, of course, he did marry her and he did settle down to stability as shown by Venus, Tithi Lord in an earth sign. Finally, this is very interesting. Let's have a look at Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, his wife. Prince Harry, of course, son of Prince Charles and Princess Diana, who has just left the whole royal family behind, gone to live in America, California, with his wife Meghan Markle. Now, Prince Harry was born on a decreasing moon, and on the 5th Tithi of that decreasing moon ruled by Jupiter. So he's a moral person. He's family orientated. Children mean a lot to him. He wants to maintain his marriage no matter what. But where is Jupiter? You've got it. It's in a fire sign. He has a Tithi dosh. Now, Jupiter, of course, is placed in the first house. It's in a Digbala position, super strong, in its own sign of Sagittarius. But still, as a Tithi Lord in a fire sign, it gives Tithi dosh. It gives the difficulty in the relationship, maintaining relationship. It gives him emotional challenge in a relationship. But when does Prince Harry go through the Jupiter Mahadasha? Well, it starts actually in 2025 for 16 years. Could bring him some good fortune, of course, we could say, because Jupiter is Lord of this sign, Lord of his first house, in Sagittarius, many good things, but it is still a Tithi dosh. It could cause difficulty in relationships. Let's have a look at his wife now, Meghan Markle, who is actually very interestingly, also got a Jupiter as her Tithi Lord. She was born on an increasing moon. She's got very sensitive emotion. She's very sensitive to emotional factors. And she was born also on a number 5 Tithi, the increasing moon Tithi Sukla Pacharmi. So Jupiter is her Tithi Lord. And where is her Jupiter? This Jupiter is in Virgo, in an earth sign. Tithi Lord in an earth sign is good, as I've shown you. It can give stability. It can give you those material benefits of marriage. But it's with Shani, and that's the most important factor. Shani is very karmic and brings difficulty. When he conjuncts with Jupiter, he can take away or give difficulty to those Jupiter significations in her life. Specifically, it's the Tithi Lord. Now, for Meghan Markle, the Jupiter Mahadasha is already running. Jupiter Mahadasha began in 2013 and continues on until 2029. Now, as soon as her Tithi Lord Dasha, Jupiter, began in 2013, she got divorced. And then she had another 2-year relationship which ended in this Mahadasha. And now she is married to Prince Harry. It's interesting to see what's going to happen, because from 2025, Prince Harry enters his fire sign Tithi Lord Mahadasha at the same time that Meghan Markle is still in her Tithi Lord Mahadasha. So we can see that the years between 2025 to 2029, some interesting developments in their relationship. It's going to get a little bit tough for them, I would imagine, during that time. Now the remedies, the all-important remedies. When we see these difficult dosh or difficult karmas in our charts, we want the remedy, of course. So, when do you need a remedy for your Tithi position? When the Tithi Lord is in a fire sign, first and foremost, Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, it's a Tithi dosh and you need a remedy. But in addition to this, as I've just shown you with the celebrity charts, Tithi Lord in a Gandanta position, Tithi Lord in Scorpio, Tithi Lord with Mars, fire element, Tithi Lord with Ketu, fire, or even with the Sun, which represents fire, you may need a remedy. Now, whether you are male or female, Tithi dosh is there because of past life karma connected to females. That's why we have Goddess Durga here, the mighty armed goddess. The idea is that we must worship the goddess in the world, worship and help women. We have to be completely respectful. So worshipping Goddess Durga, worshipping Sarasvati, any goddess form. In fact, if you are Christian, worshipping Virgin Mary. The point is, you have to worship the goddess in the universe. You have to be respectful to the female. But honoring the female has to happen in your daily life. This is where it's very, very important to do. So everybody can pay attention to this if you have a Tithi dosh. Think about all of the females in your life. It doesn't matter if you are male or female. Who are the women? Who are the females you are dealing with? Whether you are male or female, you probably find, thinking about it, that you've got some problems with females in your life. It's not just relationships, okay? You have to remedy these female relationships. You have to honor the female. You have to ask for forgiveness. You have to be humble. You have to be extremely respectful to women in your life. As I say, whether you are male or female, if you do this, you will lessen the veracity and the difficulty of this Tithi dosh. Check out the other videos in my Secrets of Vedic Astrology series. And if you're new to my channel, don't forget to sub below. Goodbye for now, and God bless everyone.